Okay, we're good. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk about post-quantum cryptography and the future of hardware. My name is Charles Guillemet. I'm CTO at Ledger. My background is cryptography and security. These are topics I'm interested in since I'm 12. When I got a computer, the first thing I did was to do hacking for fun. I joined Ledger in 2017. At the time, that was a small startup, and I've created the security department of Ledger, and now I'm in charge of everything related to the technology at Ledger. So raise your hands if you own a Ledger device. So, okay. So Ledger is the world-leading security infrastructure for crypto. We estimate that around 20% of the global crypto is secured within Ledger technology. Ledger is very well known for the retail product, the hardware devices, but we also have a B2B product for organization and corporation. We have sold around 8 million devices since the beginning of Ledger in 2014, and we are shipping across 165 countries. So, briefly about quantum computers. Quantum computers are not very fast classical computers. They are very different. They leverage quantum phenomena such as entanglement and superposition, and they are built on qubits, not on bits. They could be very powerful for very specific tasks, so they are very specialized, but they are definitely not general purpose. They are good for doing chemistry, physics, and breaking cryptography. So we are not lucky on this side. Today we know two main quantum algorithms. On one side we have Shor that is able to break asymmetric cryptography, RSA and ECC, and we have Grover that weakens symmetric encryption. It matters a lot because most of the security today relies on the system, and we have two main issues as I'm going to talk about right after. And for me, we are using cryptography in order to create trust into the security of our systems. And it's a good trust because it's mathematical trust. We really understand why and so on. And I think that as soon as this trust is eroded, we need to upgrade our system. And this is what it is about. So for me, the question is really not when we will have a quantum computer capable of breaking cryptography. We can debate on this, on the when, on the probability to have a quantum computer in 2030. But we are already at the point where the trust into the security of our system is eroded, so we need to upgrade. The cryptography that is at risk, so in cryptography we have three main families. We have encryption, hashes, and signatures. Encryption is at risk, and it's really vulnerable to the harvest now and decrypt later attacks. And this one is pretty sneaky because as long as you haven't upgraded to the new system, then you widen the window of vulnerability. So all the systems that haven't been upgraded now can be harvested now to be decrypted later. This is not really an issue for blockchain. Encryption is not really used in blockchain systems. Hashes are not fundamentally at risk, but signatures are fundamentally at risk. This is what I'm going to discuss right after. Today, we are widely using RSA and ECDSA, and both of them are at risk. Today, we are in a situation where we have like two things that are progressing at the same time. On one side, we have quantum computers that are getting more powerful with more qubits. And on the other side, we have the algorithm that would run on those quantum computers that are going theoretically more efficient. Quantum computing research have started a long time ago. The core concepts have emerged in the 80s. And the progresses have not been steady. Has been steady, but not sudden. But they could become sudden, as Ryan was explaining right before. What we are seeing also is that the funding into this company trying to build quantum computer is increasing a lot, more than 10 times in 7 years, with very big national programs in the US, in China, and in Europe. And as it was said, also the progress were made in public, but they could not be as public in the near future. Today we are still with experimental machine, with some error prone, because one of the issues of the system is to maintain the quantum coherence of the system, and this is something that is definitely not easy. We have big players investing on this, IBM, Microsoft, Google, AWS, all of them are investing a lot. On the software side, we have the algorithms that are getting more efficient. Also, that was explained at length by Ryan right before, with the Shor's algorithm that is improved day after day. We have this ECDSA.fail website that show how AI can improve even more the efficiency of this Shor's circuit. We have good news. The good news is that we have post-quantum cryptography. Post-quantum cryptography is the cryptography that allows us to be safe in a post-quantum world. And again, it's not a new concept. We started to have some of these algorithms in the 70s, and they were more extensively studied after the Shor algorithm in the 90s. And today, we also have a good news, is that we have a first wave of standardization. The standardization process started in 2016, led by the NIST. And since the 2024, we have a list of standardized algorithms and a mandate from the NIST to migrate every single system by 2030 for the critical ones and 2035 for all systems. And we are talking a lot about the idea that a quantum computer could break Bitcoin, but we have cryptography everywhere. Every single system that we are using every day is leveraging vulnerable cryptography. So this migration process will be quite difficult. And again, the difficulty is not to find the algorithm. We know them. We have a few of them that are standardized. We have a second wave of standardization, but we don't have time to wait for this second wave. So now the question is more to deploy them safely at scale, and all of this takes time. So for encryption and signatures, for encryption, the decision is settled. We are going to use ML-KEM, which is lattice-based, quite easy to implement, and no big drawbacks for this encryption system. Again, not a big problem for blockchain. For signatures, we have two main families that are standardized. On one side, we have hash-based signatures with SLH Sphinx, let's say, SLH DSA and others. They are very conservative and well studied, so we have a strong security confidence. However, there are plenty of cons. First of all, they are quite heavy in terms of computation required to create such signatures. Also, it produces very large signatures, which is not good for blockchain. You can create also a trade-off in order to have less big signatures, but then it becomes stateful. And stateful signatures are definitely not convenient. Already for users to remember their 24 words or create a backup, it's already a big pain. If you also have to maintain a state for signatures, it creates new challenges. Also, today you have very limited hardware acceleration support for hash-based signatures, but that will come. On the other side, we have lattice-based cryptography with two main algorithms that are standardized, Dilithium on one side and Falcon on the other side. And you have plenty of advantage. First of all, They use and leverage smaller keys, smaller signatures. They have good performances. And also, at least for Dilithium, we will have hardware acceleration for Dilithium implementation. In terms of drawback, they are newer, a little bit more complex, so a little less steady than hashes. Hashes is very well known and understood when it comes to lattice-based signatures. Even if lattice are studied for a long time, it's recognized that we have a little less confidence in lattice-based signatures. And in the blockchain ecosystem, this is a strong argument, and we might see a lot of blockchain going towards hash-based signatures for this reason. So today, we have a few blockchains that have already started the migration towards post-quantum cryptography. We can mention Near Protocol is going to implement MLDSA, which is a good news. We have Algorand and Solana that wants to implement Falcon signatures. Falcon signatures also come with another drawback, is that they are using like floating point arithmetic, and floating point arithmetic is definitely error-prone and vulnerability-prone. So it's more difficult to create a secure implementation of Falcon because of that. And one of the competitors for the second wave of standardization is Oak, and this one is solving essentially this problem. For Bitcoin and Ethereum, there is no consensus yet. The post-quantum migration discussions are ongoing, and we are part of this discussion group, and it seems that they want to move towards hash-based signatures, mostly because they want to be very conservative. Also on Bitcoin, quite often I'm hearing an argument that I feel is a bit unfair, is that as long as the public key is not on the blockchain, you are secure. And I think it's quite bad argument. And this is the same argument saying that if you are able to retrieve the private key from the public key in less than 10 minutes, then you enter in a danger zone because of the time for the blocks. However, public keys are meant to be public. This is the basic of cryptography. That means also that no one tried to ever secure these public keys. Like when you are using a wallet, you are providing your public key to the wallet infrastructure, and these public keys are stored like everywhere in the logs, in the database, and everywhere. They are not secured. So the argument saying that if your public key is not on the blockchain, that you are safe is a bad one. Just a quick word about the Ledger security model. So at Ledger, we are using like secure elements, smart card technology. This is the same technology that you can find in your passport or in your banking card. Circuits are very good at implementing cryptography with hardware acceleration. You can see them as a very small computer with very limited capacity. It's on purpose. The idea is really to implement only the cryptography and the security part of it. And at Ledger, we have built an operating system that runs on top of this secure element. And this operating system essentially provides a set of cryptographic API in order to do encryption, hashes, and signatures. And today, we are supporting plenty of signature, ECDSA, EDDSA, Schnorr, BLS, and others. All of them are not quantum resistant, but we can leverage the hardware acceleration that there is inside the secure element. Inside the secure element, you have like a specific part of the hardware that will like accelerate Montgomery modular multiplication or Z primitive in order to be able to compute the signatures with quite acceptable performance, but also you have like a hardware security countermeasure in order to avoid an attackers extract the keys using side channels or fault attacks and so on. And today, with the current secure element that we are using, there is nothing for hardware acceleration, and security countermeasure for post-quantum algorithm. However, we still can implement them in software, in firmware, let's say, but we can't leverage the acceleration of the device because there is no hardware acceleration for those post-quantum signatures. Today, we have already implemented MLGSA and MLKEM. As I mentioned, MLKEM is not useful for blockchain. However, it's useful for Ledger because we have a secure channel between our HSM and the devices in order to do like firmware upgrade over the air, mutual authentication, genuineness check, and so on. So we are upgrading this secure channel using MLKEM and also MLGSA. We are going to implement a hash-based signature for the future and Falcon. We are doing this in software in firmware for current devices. But it will come with quite poor performances. For like a very big hash-based signature, it can take like several seconds to generate your keys, several seconds to sign them. But the good news is that for the future generation of secure elements, the ones that are tape out in 2026, the one that we are going to use in the next generation Ledger devices, we will have hardware acceleration for hash-based signature and MLGSA. Falcon is not really used in the normal IT world, so that's why the secure element of next generation devices won't implement hardware acceleration for those. And again, as I mentioned, Falcon is not that good in terms of security because of the floating point arithmetic that is vulnerability prone. To finish with, quantum is really like a transition challenge. There is no cryptographic crisis. We have a solution. And again, we are using cryptography in order to create trust into the security of our systems. So we don't have to wait for a quantum computer capable of breaking cryptography to transition. This trust is already eroded. Now it's really a matter of doing this transition. For the traditional IT, it's going to be very difficult just because of two reasons. On one side, you have the harvest now and decrypt later. So in theory, we are already too late. And the second one is that cryptography is already deeply embedded everywhere in plenty of very different systems, sometimes in embedded systems, sometimes in different cloud. We have cryptography everywhere. Creating this transition will be incredibly difficult. For blockchain, the problem is much more simple. The question is really more to agree on the migration path, because there is no harvest now and decrypt later. So the problem is really a social consensus problem, not a technology one. So the different question we have is what's the migration path? What's the timeline? What do we do with the coins that do not migrate? Because we will add a new signature algorithm, new addresses, and we will ask users to send their coins to these new addresses. For Bitcoin, as the blockchain throughput is very low, we would need something like 5 or 6 months to migrate all the coins if we use all the bandwidths of Bitcoin to these new addresses. What do we do for the coins that do not migrate? We have three bad solutions. Either we let them where they are, meaning that as soon as we have a quantum computer, they will be stolen, which creates an issue for Bitcoin price stability. Or we say that we freeze these coins, meaning that we don't have 21 million Bitcoin anymore, but 15, 16 million, I don't know. Or we say we kill them and we tail emit them in order to solve the security challenge that we might have for the mining process. And also another question that it raises is now with bigger signatures, it will take more space in the blockchain. I don't know if you were there in 2017, but there was a big war about the Bitcoin blockchain block size that created Bitcoin Cash and others. So we might have the same kind of question when we will migrate towards post-quantum cryptography. So again, the question is not to wait for a quantum computer capable of breaking cryptography. The question is to coordinate, to agree on a social consensus to migrate the blockchain in order to make them secure for the future. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Any questions? I guess one question that comes to mind is within Ledger, once you implement support for post-quantum, are you going to implement also facilities to help users migrate from their existing addresses to the post-quantum addresses?
Yeah, so first of all, we are migrating our own infrastructure because we don't rely on the blockchain migration. And as soon as the blockchain are ready to support post-quantum cryptography, we will create the helpers to make the migration as simple as possible. Yes.
So if you're a Ledger user, presumably the transition will be simpler than having to do everything manually.
Exactly.
You'll do a lot of the transition for them.
But you will still have to sign something with your device in order to, so that will require users' intervention, because as Ledger, we don't know anything about your keys, and we are a technology solution, not a financial provider.
Right. Great, yeah, makes sense. Please, one last question.
A company like Trezor is promoting a quantum-ready wallet. Would you say that's more of a marketing gimmick right now versus something that's necessary for later states? Is it a hardware solution, or can people download quantum-ready software onto their existing wallets?
So, as I mentioned, what we can do today, so Ledger solutions are a mix of hardware capabilities and the embedded software that is running on this hardware capability. So today, with the current hardware that we have, we can update the operating system in order to support most of this post-quantum cryptography. It's not perfect because we don't have all the property that we have for classical cryptography with hardware security resistance and good performance and so on, but it's possible. And at the same time, we are preparing the future for next generation secure element that will have the right level of support for post-quantum cryptography, at least for hash-based ones and MLGSA, not really for Falcon.
Do you guys find that this is communication coming from users, or is it primarily like about you getting ahead of things? I'm just wondering about like consumer awareness about post-quantum.
We have a lot of questions for users, and I think, like as I mentioned, like we use cryptography for creating trust, and I think it can create like a price pressure because as like to the down because as soon as you have less trust in the security of Bitcoin, that means that people might want to trust less Bitcoin, and it creates a down pressure on the price. So we have users that are asking us, when do you migrate to post-quantum cryptography? It's ongoing, but we might be as ready as we can. If Bitcoin has not migrated to PQC, we cannot do much. So this is where we are, but I think that generally speaking, it becomes more and more an important topic for users and for the ecosystem. And especially when we are hearing people from Google that are saying that in 2029 we have a 5 to 10% chance that we have a quantum computer capable of breaking Bitcoin. That means that users, it creates pressure from the users, obviously.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's great to see that you guys are responsible in making this transition as quickly as you can. So thank you, Charles.
Thank you.